Heartwarming revelation. Billionaire's incredible response to mother ripping Maid's uniform will change Riverview forever. Ella's heart raced as she dusted the finely carved edges of the ornate family portraits that lined the walls of Sylvia Montgomery's grand living room. The sunlight streamed through the massive windows, casting a warm glow that accentuated the gold-framed images of wealth and privilege. But here she was, a hard-working single mother in her humble maid's uniform, invisible beneath the weight of righteousness that came with the job. The shimmering dust settled around her like the judgment she felt from the people she served. As the gentle whir of a vacuum filled the air, she suddenly caught a snippet of conversation. Sylvia's sharp voice sliced through the tranquility. "This low-quality fabric is absurd." Ella's heart sank. She recognized her own uniform as it fell victim to Sylvia's swift hand, torn from contempt. The ripping sound echoed loud in Ella's ears, each tear a gash in the fabric of her dignity. It felt personal. She clenched her fists, her face burning with indignation. The rip was more than just fabric. It was the history of mothers and fathers who worked tirelessly, scraping to provide for their children. Daniel, her bright-eyed son, was the spark that fueled her efforts. She dreamed of him being the first to attend college, to break the cycle of invisible toil and reach for a future that shone just out of grasp. Ella's tight chest was filled with boiling rage, but also the hopelessness of dreams fading beneath countless crisply ironed suits. Word raced through the streets of Riverview faster than a summer breeze. Murmurs swept over the community, whispers of injustice and empathy entwined with the thin sheen of tension that simmered beneath their friendly facades. Ella's neighbors, the very ones who smiled at her in passing, now wrestled with guilt and powerlessness. They loved her, yet felt bound to the lines of class that divided their lives. That night, as Daniel tossed and turned in bed, he felt it too. The suffocating weight of dreams unfulfilled rested heavily on both of their shoulders. He longed to defend his mother, but feared the world's judgment more than he feared disappointment. Then, in a twist of fate that would ignite change, Nathan, a self-made billionaire with ties to Riverview, caught wind of the incident. He had once been that bullied boy, overlooked and underestimated, driven by love and resilience. A chill raced down his spine as memories flooded back, whispering the same tales of judgment he had endured growing up. Determined to address the community, Nathan organized a town meeting. He stood at the front, heart pounding, connecting the fragments of his past to the present. "We cannot allow this kind of prejudice to tear apart our community." The room fell silent, dozens of eyes turning toward Ella. More than just a maid, she was a mother. He spoke of hard work and integrity, delivering a powerful message that ignited something profound in the hearts of those packed in the hall. "Ella, I see you," Nathan said, his voice steady yet emotional. "Your labor is not unnoticed." It felt like an embrace, the warmth wrapping around Ella, and in that moment, a shift occurred. Understandings formed around that room, and the space once filled with unspoken judgments began glowing with acceptance. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But even as tensions in the room began to lift, the underlying currents of class disparity still hung heavy. Could it be different? Could Ella reclaim her dignity? Would Daniel find a way to navigate between his mother's struggles and his dreams? As murmurs filled the air, it became clear that Riverview stood on the brink of a change, one shaped by the love, sweat, and tears of the invisible. Would they finally recognize the ties that bind their stories together, or would they falter at the threshold of the unknown? The meeting ended, but the unresolved echoes of hope lingered, setting the stage for the next chapter in their intertwined lives. Change Riverview forever. The following day, Ella awoke to the sound of sunlight streaming through her small kitchen window. It felt different. The air was charged with possibility, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to envision a future that glimmered just a step beyond her reach. Daniel stumbled into the room, his tousled hair a testament to his restless night. He looked at her, eyes heavy yet alive with curiosity, searching for signs of strength and hope. "Mom, do you think things will really change?" he asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Ella knelt beside him, placing her hand on his cheek. "Change can be slow, sweetheart, but it starts with believing we deserve more." The warmth of her words seemed to resonate, lifting the weight he wore like a heavy coat. Across town, a small crowd gathered outside Riverview Town Hall. News of Nathan Montgomery's speech had stirred something deep within the community. Families filled the seats, faces lined with determination, as they prepared for the discussion headed by Nathan and the local leaders. There was a quiet electricity in the air, a sense of urgency tinged with excitement. Nathan stood at the podium, scanning the audience. "It's time we acknowledge the invisible labor that supports our lives," he said, his voice booming like a rallying cry. "Let us commit to creating a community where everyone is valued." A ripple of agreement surged through the crowd. Hands reached up to clap, cheers broke out, and even those who were once skeptical began to nod in solidarity. It was a moment where humanity rose above disparity, a bridge formed, even for those wary of crossing it. Later that evening, Ella and Daniel sat together on their worn-out couch, the remnants of the day still buzzing in their minds. Daniel turned to her, a flicker of hope dancing in his eyes. "Did you hear what everyone said?" "They listened, Mom. They really listened." "I know," Ella replied, fighting back tears. "But words are just the beginning. We need action too." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Ella felt a stirring deep within her heart. The fire that Nathan had sparked was spreading, igniting dreams buried beneath layers of hardship. She resolved to join the community group that had formed after the meeting. Her voice would be part of the movement, and she would ensure Daniel found his own as well. The next morning, swept up in fervor, the town met again. This time, Ella stood before them, courage coursing through her veins. "I am not just a maid," she began, her voice trembling yet powerful. "I am a mother." Her simple declaration shattered the room, creating an echo of shared struggles and hardships. People shifted uncomfortably as she shared stories of late-night shifts and hollow hopes, of the sacrifices made for the next generation. The silence was thick, yet it bore an understanding that had been absent before. The crowd absorbed her words, watching her with admiration. For the first time, Ella saw the shifting tides of their perceptions, the glimmers of empathy illuminated in their eyes. But doubts rumbled beneath this fragile hope. Would her words truly lead to change? Would they stand with her when it gets tough? As the meeting reached its peak, Ella felt the urgency of the moment. "We can redefine what it means to be a community," she urged, "but we must do it together." The applause that erupted was deafening, echoing her plea through the very soul of Riverview. Yet, as they celebrated this newfound unity, questions still lingered. Could this fragile harmony hold, or would the deep-rooted expectations resurface and tear their efforts apart? Amidst the highs and lows of the evening, a familiar face emerged from the crowd. Nathan approached Ella, a mix of pride and concern in his gaze. "You did great up there," he said, sincerity etched across his features. "But the real challenge is still ahead of us." Ella felt her heart race again as adrenaline surged. "What do you mean?" "There are those who won't be pleased with this change," he warned, eyes darting to the edges of the crowd. "We must prepare for the resistance." In that charged moment, Ella realized the path they had chosen was not just about recognition, but about fighting for a new future, hand in hand with those willing to brave the storm. Would they hold strong against the backlash? Would they stand united in the face of adversity? The doubts swirled, questions lingered, and hope pulsed, a living force ready to set Riverview aflame with transformation. The next day dawned with a heaviness that settled over Riverview like a thick fog. Ella woke to the soft sound of Daniel letting out a small yawn. The excitement of the previous day's unity meeting lingered in the air, but the reality of potential backlash cast a shadow. At breakfast, Daniel picked at his cereal, his once bright smile now replaced by a thoughtful furrow in his brow. "Mom, do you think we'll really make a difference?" His innocent question hung between them, filled with trepidation. Ella met his gaze, her heart a mix of pride and fear. "We can, Daniel, but we need to be ready for anything. Not everyone will cheer for change." She wanted so desperately to shield him from the reality of resistance. Yet she knew they could not shy away from the fight any longer. Determined to forge ahead, Ella headed to the community center later that morning, where a strategy meeting was set to take place. The room buzzed with energy as people filed in, each face a reflection of the previous night's resolve sprinkled with uncertainty. Nathan kicked things off. Today, we need to brainstorm ways to engage those who are doubtful or skeptical about our mission. His tone was firm, yet hopeful, an anchor for the group as they faced the unknown together. Ella watched as ideas bounced around the room. Some people proposed door-to-door campaigns, while others suggested small group discussions to build bridges with their neighbors. She listened closely, her hands clenched together in her lap, but something within her itched to speak. As each person expressed their fears and hopes, she could feel the fire igniting again. Finally, she stood up, clearing her throat. What if we shared our stories more? What if we let our neighbors see not just our struggles, but our victories? It was a wild thought, but she knew it could resonate. Nathan nodded, his eyes shining with appreciation. Absolutely. Stories can form the deep connections we need. As they formed plans for a community story night, a flicker of excitement began to calm Ella's racing heart. Maybe vulnerability could be their greatest weapon against resistance. That night, as she tucked Daniel into bed, she recalled the strength in sharing her truth with the gathering. You know, Daniel, she murmured softly, our stories have power. They can bring people together. His eyes sparkled. Like superheroes, he exclaimed with a grin. Yes, Ella agreed, her own heart swelling at his innocence. Like superheroes. Days passed, and the anticipation for the community story night built steadily. Finally, the evening arrived. Tables were decorated with simple centerpieces, and laughter filled the air as families shuffled into the center. The warmth of the community was palpable, but Ella could sense the tension among some groups who hadn't fully bought in yet. The event began, a series of folks stepping up to share snippets of their lives' struggles, aspirations, and moments of joy. The crowd listened intently, smiles and tears mingling freely. When it was Ella's turn, she felt a mixture of nerves and strength. Stepping up, she spoke of missed meals and sacrifices, of dreams jobbed out to time and circumstances. Her voice broke. She spotted familiar faces from the previous days, encouragement etched in their expressions. This isn't just about us, she urged, it's about everyone. We all matter. Let us lift each other up. The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing deep within her. The spell of unity expanded, pulling people closer, making eyes mist with understanding. But as the crowd began to disperse, she saw a familiar figure lingering at the door. It was Mrs. Kensington, the wealthy matriarch of Riverview, a woman whose opinions often shaped the thoughts of many. Ella's breath caught. Would she be open to the tide of change, or would she harbor the resistance Nathan feared? Mrs. Kensington's gaze met Ella's, and for a brief, heart-stopping moment, the room fell silent, tension thick in the air. Your speech was unexpected, Mrs. Kensington finally said, stepping forward. But perhaps there is something here worth exploring after all. Hope trembled in Ella's chest. The weight of the evening's triumph surged again. Could this signal the start of broader acceptance? Would those once trapped in indifference open their hearts? As she looked into Mrs. Kensington's eyes, filled with challenges and opportunities, Ella knew their fight wasn't over, but another door had creaked open. What would it take for Riverview to fully embrace the change? Would this be the moment they needed to transform doubt into solidarity? Ella's heart raced with anticipation for the possibilities shimmering on the horizon. Ella could hardly breathe. Watching Mrs. Kensington take those tentative steps toward her, the weight of the moment pressed down like an iron hand. The audience buzzed with hushed murmurs, each whispered word clinging to the air, thicker than fog. Perhaps Mrs. Kensington began, her voice low but steady. Perhaps it's time for me to step out of my comfort zone, to listen a bit more. As she spoke, an unexpected wave of courage washed over Ella. This was the moment she had hoped for, but never dared to truly expect. Ella found her voice. Thank you, Mrs. Kensington. That really means a lot. There was a flicker of surprise in the older woman's eyes, which Ella took as encouragement. Change starts small. It starts with conversations, with understanding each other's stories. Mrs. Kensington nodded thoughtfully, a hint of softness entering her usually stern demeanor. Would you be open to me joining your next meeting? I want to hear more about what this community truly needs. A mix of emotions surged through Ella, excitement, doubt, and hope, all fighting for dominance. Of course, she replied, trying to mask her smile of disbelief. She couldn't help but think of how far they had come. Just the thought of a meeting with Mrs. Kensington felt monumental. As the evening progressed, Ella found herself surrounded by familiar faces seeking her out amidst the jubilation. Each exchanged congratulations felt like warm hugs, further solidifying the bond of resilience rippling through the community. She could hear snippets of conversations buzzing around her. Did you hear Mrs. Kensington? She wants to be part of this. Maybe, just maybe, things are changing for the better. But as thrill coursed through her veins, a lingering sense of apprehension took root in the pit of her stomach. Acceptance from Mrs. Kensington was a big step, but Ella remembered the doubters not just in the room, but in the town as a whole. Would those still resistant be swayed? Would they embrace the tide of change, or would they lash out, fearing their world was being uprooted? At home that night, Ella sat on the edge of Daniel's bed, tucking him in. Today was something special, wasn't he it? She whispered, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. He nodded sleepily, eyes already blinking shut. Mom, do you really think she'll help us? He murmured, voice thick with sleepiness. I hope so, sweetheart. People can surprise us. Her heart swelled with both pride and anxiety. She had inspired hope in her community, and now, like a blooming flower pushing through concrete, the first seeds of change were starting to break ground. But as Ella prepared to leave Daniel's room, a thought tugged at her. A reminder of the battles yet to come. If Mrs. Kensington would indeed push the tide of change in their favor, would other powerful figures follow suit? Would they be willing to listen, or would they dismiss Ella's efforts? That night, visions of Riverview flooded her mind, the vibrant colors of the community garden, the laughter of children echoing through the streets, and the faces of neighbors coming together in unity. Her heart ached for this town to embrace its full potential, to find strength in their shared humanity. The following week brought about a meeting scheduled with Mrs. Kensington and firefighters joining the discussions. Ella felt invigorated but wary. Would Mrs. Kensington truly bring her influence to reshape minds? Or could her involvement introduce more complications than support? She leaned back against her kitchen chair, staring out the window where the sun dipped below the horizon. The shadows of uncertainty loomed larger than ever. As that ominous feeling tugged at her, Daniel burst into the room, bright-eyed and bouncing. Mom, can we do that superhero story night again? His innocence shattered the heavy thoughts, stirring something deep within her. Maybe we can, buddy. Let us plan for it. But we'll need to keep spreading these stories. The idea nestled into her mind, a beacon of hope amidst doubt. Each story was a thread, weaving a stronger tapestry of strength, compassion, and resilience. The next community gathering promised to be more than just sharing stories. Could it be another turning point? How would Riverview respond now that Mrs. Kensington was willing to engage? And what deeper truths might emerge from them all on that coming night? Ella's heart raced at the thought. This was more than community and acceptance. This was about transformation. With a breath, she held on to her hope tightly, knowing that she was ready to embrace whatever came next. The question lingered. Could this next meeting finally be the catalyst that united a fractured community under a banner of love and understanding? The big day arrived with a mix of excitement and anxiety swirling around Ella like confetti caught in the wind. As she dressed in front of her bathroom mirror, she couldn't stop herself from glancing at the bright blue dress she loved to wear. Today, it felt like armor against doubt. Straightening the collar, she took a deep breath, trying to center herself. Elizabeth Kensington wasn't just a figure of authority, she was a tidal wave that could either drown them in chaos or usher in calm. Daniel hurried through the house, his backpack half-zipped. Are you coming, Mom? He called, his voice filled with youthful exuberance. I'll be right there, sweetheart, she replied, giving her reflection one last determined look. The community center buzzed with an energy that was palpable. Neighbors exchanged curious glances, electrified by anticipation. Had Mrs. Kensington really decided to engage? As Ella entered the room, the chatter faded slightly, eyes darting toward her. A smile broke over her face. It felt like a small victory, just to be there at the front of the room. There she was, Mrs. Kensington, standing tall, her usually formidable presence softened by an empathetic expression. Ella squeezed her hands together, trying to ground herself as the tension crackled in the air. Could they truly break down the walls that separated them? "Thank you all for being here," Mrs. Kensington began, her deep voice steady. "I'm here today to listen and learn." A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. Ella watched as people shifted in their seats, curiosity replacing their wariness. Ella sat beside her friend Mia, who leaned in to whisper, "Can you believe this? She actually showed up." "Yeah," Ella replied, heart racing. "This is huge." As the meeting progressed, Ella's voice grew steadier with every story, shared tales of struggles, hopes, and dreams. Each account felt like a thread, linking them tighter together. Daniel sat attentively beside her, wide-eyed and scribbling notes of his own. "Mr. Thompson, would you share your perspective?" Mrs. Kensington prompted, her eyes shining with genuine interest. The elderly man cleared his throat, a slight tremor in his voice as he spoke about the importance of community resources. "We all want to make Riverview a better place," he started. "But it's hard when we feel overlooked." Ella felt his words resonate in her chest like a drumbeat. It wasn't just about resources, it was about acknowledgement. "Thank you for that, Mr. Thompson," Mrs. Kensington replied, nodding thoughtfully. "Do you think if we reallocated some of the funding from the top, it could benefit the community?" Gasps of disbelief swept through the room. Ella's heart soared as hope shimmered in the air. Perhaps this was the change they had dreamed of, the beginning of collaboration rather than division. But as the evening progressed, a familiar voice broke through the positivity. "This is all well and good," Chip, one of the more skeptical town council members, said, "but can we trust her? Can she really lead us out of this mess?" A ripple of apprehension washed over the crowd. Ella's heart sank. Was this the moment when everything would unravel? Mrs. Kensington took a breath, her composure unwavering. "Change isn't built overnight, and I recognize that trust is earned. I am here to listen, to work alongside you." She glanced at each person. "Let us remember, we've all been part of this community for a reason." Ella exchanged glances with Mia, her spirit renewed. If Mrs. Kensington could open the door, maybe, just maybe, they could walk through it together. As the meeting drew to a close, Ella felt invigorated. She watched as people began to mingle, small conversations forming bridges. Maybe they could build trust, step by step. But then, a loud crash shattered the atmosphere. Ella turned to see a group of teenagers laughing amid a mess of fallen chairs. The disturbance pulled everyone's focus, and Ella felt her newfound hope teetering. "MOM!" Daniel yelled, alarm in his voice. Ella's breath caught in her throat. Was this a sign of trouble ahead? Just when they were starting to connect, could chaos threaten to tear them apart again? The weight of the moment pressed down on her once more. What would happen next? Ella's heart raced as she rushed to Daniel's side, her instincts kicking in. "Keep calm, sweetheart," she shouted over the murmurs of shock that spread through the crowd. Daniel looked terrified, his little face pale as he pointed towards the chaos. The teenagers continued their uproar, completely oblivious to the tension they decreated. "We're just having a little fun," one of them yelled. Ella recognized him from school. Michael, known for his cocky attitude and unruly behavior. She felt a flash of anger but pushed it aside. Mrs. Kensington stepped forward, her eyes narrowing at the group. "Enough," she commanded, her voice ringing clear and authoritative. The room fell silent. Michael and his friends exchanged glances, their confidence wavering in the face of the community leader. Ella knew this was a pivotal moment. Mrs. Kensington had the chance to shift the narrative. "This isn't the way to engage," she continued, her tone firm yet calm. "You've disrupted something important." Michael shrugged, seeming to regain his bravado. "We were just joking around. No big deal." Ella took a deep breath. "It is a big deal," she said. "This is our chance to connect, to be heard. You're part of this community too. Don't you want to be a part of the change?" For an instant, uncertainty flickered across his face. It was a small crack in his facade, enough for Ella to see a glimmer of the young man beneath the bravado. "Ella's right," Mrs. Kensington added. "Change begins with all of us working together, not tearing each other down. So let us choose the path of unity." The silence stretched as the room absorbed her words. Ella could feel the weight of the moment for Mrs. Kensington, for the community, and for Michael. After a long pause, he mumbled, "Yeah, all right." With a flicker of resistance, he turned to his friends and added, "Let us clean this up." Ella felt a wave of relief wash over her. It wasn't just about the chairs, it was about acknowledgement, about realizing they were all part of the same fabric. As the teenagers began to gather the scattered chairs, Ella looked around the room. The atmosphere had shifted, the sense of community was reigniting. "See," Mia said beside her, a smile breaking through her worry. "You were right to speak up." As the crowd began to mingle again, Ella felt a warmth blooming in her chest. She was proud of her friend for expressing her feelings, and it felt like a milestone toward the community they all desired. But amidst the celebration, a darker energy still lingered. Chip's face was fixed in a scowl as he whispered to several council members in a corner. Ella could see the determination in his posture, the way he gestured emphatically. Doubt mixed with the triumph, and Ella wondered if this was truly a turning point or just a brief pause in a greater conflict. Just then, Daniel tugged her hand. "Mom, I just thought of something," he said, wide-eyed with innocence. "What if we all wrote down our hopes for the town and gave them to Mrs. Kensington? Wouldn't that help?" Ella paused, her heart warming at the thought. It was simple, yet profound. A collective vision could be the concrete step they needed. "Daniel, that is a brilliant idea," she exclaimed. "Let's talk to Mrs. Kensington about it." But just as she focused on Michael again, a piercing sound echoed from outside, the unmistakable wail of sirens. The moment again shifted as heads turned, a collective hush falling over the room. Anxiety curled in her stomach as she caught a glimpse of the flashing lights through the windows. What now? Could they truly step forward together with the weight of the world pressing down on them? She felt uncertainty, but also a thread of anticipation. What awaited them outside that door? Would this meeting be the dawn of a new day or a return to old battles? Ella felt the words stick in her throat like gravel as she stood frozen, uncertainty gnawing at her. The sirens screeched louder, a siren song heralding something ominous. She turned to Daniel, kneeling so she was at eye level with him. "Stay close, okay?" she said, squeezing his small hand in reassurance. His wide eyes reflected both fear and curiosity, a mixture of emotions she recognized all too well. The room buzzed restlessly as people murmured their concerns, pointing towards the windows. Ella pushed through the crowd, an urgency building within her. She needed to understand what was happening outside. Daniel followed, his little footsteps quickening to match her pace. When they reached the door leading to the main entrance, Ella opened it gingerly, the rush of outside air catching her off guard. She stepped into the chill, blinking against the sudden brightness. What she saw sent a chill down her spine. An emergency vehicle, its lights flashing, parked near the community center with officers milling about. The chaos had transformed swiftly into something serious. "Mom, what is going on?" Daniel's voice trembled beside her. "I don't know, sweetheart." She scanned the area, spotting Mrs. Kensington talking animatedly with a police officer, her expression a blend of concern and determination. The realization struck Ella hard. Whatever was happening, it was big enough to draw the attention of the law. "Let us go see," Ella said, steering Daniel closer to the authority figures. They edged their way through the small knot of onlookers, everyone's faces carved with worry. Daniel clung to her side, his little fingers interlaced with hers like a tiny lifeline. An incident reported nearby, Ella overheard one officer say, his tone clipped and professional. "We're just gathering information for the safety of the community." The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. Ella felt a sense of dread blossom in her chest. Just when it seemed like they were starting to connect and build something together, turmoil threatened to pull it apart. As they drew closer, Mrs. Kensington spotted them and waved Ella over. "I'm glad you're here, Ella. There's been a disturbance just a few blocks away," she explained hastily. "A car accident, and, well, potential gunshots were reported." Ella's heart dropped. "Daniel, honey, stay close," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "Are we safe here?" he asked, his tiny voice barely above a whisper. "For now, yes," Mrs. Kensington assured. "But we need to mobilize our community. We can't let fear break the bonds we're starting to build. We have to stay united." Ella watched as people began to murmur in agreement, her heart swelling with pride for the resilience being forged. but she couldn't shake the fear that lingered at the edges of her mind. As people began organizing and sharing ideas to maintain safety, she noticed Chip still sulking at the edge, an irritation simmering behind his eyes. Now's our chance, she thought. If they could leverage this moment, they might truly bring about the change they had envisioned. But how to reach through the walls of hostility he wore like armor? Just then, Daniel tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, what should we do?" His innocent question pierced through her haze of uncertainty like a beacon. "Let us write down our hopes for the town, just like you said before," she replied, the idea blooming anew in her mind. Perhaps this was the right time to channel both fear and hope into action, to show everyone the kind of future they envisioned together. As they turned back to the crowd, nothing could prepare her for what would unfold next. In that moment of urgency, she glimpsed a flicker of hope. But would it be enough to ignite a fire in others when the shadows outside loomed darker than ever? Ella took a deep breath, squeezing Daniel's hand tighter. They had to act. They had to be a part of the change, even if it felt overwhelming. As she moved back toward the gathered crowd, her heart raced. Fear and uncertainty twisted in her stomach like a coiled spring, but she refused to show it. Instead, she focused on the faces around her, studious and apprehensive. "Okay, everyone," she called out, trying to project confidence. "We need to come together. Let us write down our hopes. What kind of town do we want? What does safety look like for us?" A few heads turned, eyebrows knit together in confusion. She caught sight of Chip, arms crossed defiantly, but something flickered in his eyes. Could it be curiosity? She pressed on. "Think about it. We can make a map of our dreams. If we share what we want, we can rally together instead of letting fear divide us." Mrs. Kensington stepped up beside Ella, nodding in agreement. "She's right. We're stronger together. Let us use this moment to build a vision for our community, one not defined by chaos." Slowly, muffled voices rose among the crowd, people starting to nod. They leaned in, curiosity drawn to her words like a moth to a flame. "What if we focus on everything good in our lives? Everything we want to protect?" Ella urged, feeling a new sense of energy flow through her cautiously. "Like more streetlights," an older man shouted from the back, "and community events," a woman near the front added, her voice slicing the tension in the air. "Yes, yes." Ella felt her own spirits lifting. "What else? Let us hear it." Daniel squeezed her hand tighter, excitement flickering in his eyes. Ella was amazed by the wave of responses pouring in. They began gathering paper and markers, writing down ideas that embodied unity and safety. Children joined in, their laughter breaking through the heavy air, creating a startling juxtaposition against the ominous backdrop beyond the community center. But then, just as hope surged, the wail of sirens grew closer. Ella's heart sank once more. Instinctively, she glanced at Daniel, his innocent face lit with anticipation, a butterfly caught in a storm. Before she could say anything, a group of officers approached the community center, their faces serious and tense. Ella felt her stomach drop. She steadied herself, putting on a brave face for Daniel. "Stay close, buddy," she whispered, bracing for whatever news they might bring. One officer stepped forward, scanning the crowd. "We need to ask if anyone saw or heard anything unusual tonight," he announced, his voice echoing with authority. "We have reason to believe the incident might not be over." A murmur swept through the group, unease spreading like wildfire. The chant of hope faded as fear clawed back in. Ella's heart raced. This wasn't just about them anymore. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her chest. She had to do something. "We'll help," she called out, her voice shaking but resolute. "Let us show them we're here for each other." Suddenly, Chip stepped forward, breaking the tension. "We saw a blue car earlier. It drove past fast like it was running from something." His voice, typically so laced with an edge, now carried a hint of bravery. Ella looked at him, surprised. "Yes, every detail matters. Let us share everything we know." The community shifted. Ella saw the walls of fear cracking, replaced by a collective determination to act. They were no longer just a group of individuals, they were becoming a family. Together, they would weave their story into something resilient. But as she watched the nervous glances exchanged in the crowd, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. What were they truly up against? She turned again to Daniel, who was clutching the paper they'd started writing on, his small face filled with hope. Could they truly face whatever darkness threatened them? As she looked out to the gathering, a question hung in the air: what would it take to uncover the truth concealed beneath the chaos? With the sirens still howling in the distance, tension hung thick like an uninvited guest, waiting for the next move in their uncertain fight for safety and unity. Ella could barely hear the officer's words over the rising chatter of the crowd. Fear radiated off faces like heat from the pavement on a scorching day. Even the children's laughter had quieted, replaced by shuffling feet and murmurs of skepticism. She felt the weight of expectation, the hope she had ignited now at risk of being snuffed out. "Please," she called again, her voice rising in frantic urgency. "We can work together to keep our community safe. Let us think about what we can do if we combine our strength." The officer looked at her, eyebrows lifting in surprise. His partner stood nearby, arms crossed, surveying the crowd warily, but the first officer seemed to sense her eagerness and stepped forward again. "You could start by keeping an eye out for anything unusual. Your help could be vital. We're all in this together." "That's right," Chip interjected, gaining some momentum. "We're the ones who know this place. We need to share what we know. Our community is our responsibility." One by one, people began to speak, sharing every detail, their fear transforming into a pulsating energy that flowed through the crowd. Stories burst forth about late-night noises, strange cars, and shadowy figures making their way through the streets. It was as if something was unlocking inside them, a courage they didn't know they had. Ella felt hope swell in her chest, the earlier anxiety slowly shifting. She watched as Mrs. Kensington started pulling people together, asking them to jot down each concern. The community center was alive with a newfound purpose. "Let us create a community watch," Ella suggested, her heart racing at the potential. "We can form teams to patrol during the evenings. We could set up a hotline for anyone who feels unsafe." The idea rippled through the crowd. People nodded, thumbs up scattered among the hesitant murmurs. Daniel watched with wide eyes, absorbing the momentum, the light of the room wrapping around his small frame like a protective cocoon. Suddenly, one of the women Ella recognized from the farmer's market stood stiffly. "What about those of us who can't patrol? There are families with little kids, people who work odd hours." Her voice wavered, but concern was palpable in her eyes. "Great point," Ella replied quickly. "Maybe we can organize a community meeting scheduled to share updates about what we notice and check in with each other. We can create an awareness group, everybody's involved." As she spoke, the crowd began to form a circle, something resembling unity creating a spark among them. Tension slipped away, slowly replaced by a common bond and understanding that they were in it together, but an echo of fear lingered, like a shadow stretching at the edges. As they spoke, more truths began to rise to the surface, a collective pain, sadness, and anger that had lurked beneath the single thread of fear they had been holding on to. "I can't lose my family to this chaos," a father with tear-brimmed eyes stated sharply, the fight or flight mechanism slipping into his voice. "We need to not just chase shadows, but confront the root of our fears, the source of this violence." The crowd grew silent, absorbing his words. Ella wanted to comfort him. She wanted to assure them that they would succeed. But she couldn't promise that, not with the darkness lurking so close. Just then, the lights flickered, casting eerie shapes on the walls. Ella's heart seized, and she could almost feel a chill wrapping around her again. Was it merely a technical problem, or was something deeper at play? Daniel tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, what is going to happen now?" She looked down into his innocent eyes, swirling with questions. "I promise, sweetie, we'll figure it out together." But that flicker of doubt in her heart remained. What awaited them in this uncertain fight? And, as the sirens faded into an unsettling silence, the embers of fear began to glow brighter again. What was truly hiding just out of sight, waiting for them to step into the dark? Ella's heart raced as she stood at the forefront of the gathered community. Hope and determination filled the air, but the tension was still palpable. Just moments ago, they had come together in the face of darkness, responding to an incident that revealed the cracks in their connectedness. Now, as they huddled, she realized she had to turn that fear into courage. "Everyone listen," Ella called, finding her voice amidst the hum of worry. "We have taken the first step, but it's not enough to just gather our fears. We need to rise, not only for ourselves but for each other. We are neighbors, friends, and families. Riverview is ours, and together we can create a safe place. People turned to her, a mix of uncertainty and curiosity glimmering in their eyes. She faced them, inhaling the energy of the moment. It surged through her like lightning. This is not about fighting against something. It's about coming together for something greater. For our kids, for our community, and for the future we want to build. Daniel watched wide-eyed, and Ella felt his small hand in hers, grounding her as she fought against self-doubt. There was determination in her chest, a fire she had never felt before. Let us each share what we want Riverview to be. Let us build a vision together, she urged. We need to write down our hopes, our dreams, our ideas. This is our chance to spark real change. Small murmurs began to stir again, and soon those fears began pushing through the barrier, letting light seep back in. She smiled as various hands raised, people eager to take part. Slowly, chips of doubt began to fall off the Unity facade. One by one, folks shared their thoughts. More community gatherings, safe spaces for kids to play, regular check-ins among neighbors. Ella felt the pulse of hope swell to a crescendo as more voices joined in. They began forming ideas, jotting them down on paper that quickly filled a makeshift bulletin board. It was a breathtaking sight, their dreams transforming from whispered hopes to handwritten promises. Next to her, Mrs. Kensington took charge, her voice steady but warm as she led conversations with the police officers, discussing how they could support the community watch. Suddenly, the officer who had approached them earlier stepped forward. This is a beautiful initiative. Community involvement is key. We will provide resources, training, and support for your watch program. People clapped, the sound echoing through the building, wrapping around Ella like a cozy blanket. Her heart swelled with pride as the shift ignited within her neighbors. Riverview wasn't just a town, it was home, and they were ready to protect it. But then, as the surge of camaraderie peaked, the electric hum of tension returned. A shout broke through the jubilance, a silver-haired woman staggering back, fear etched across her features. "Did you hear that?" she gasped. Whispers flared, and eyes grew wide as Ella felt an unsettling rush. "What did you hear?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil brewing in the room. "There's been a fight." Down the street came a panic from the back. Ella's heart sank. Fear crashed against the walls of unity they had worked so hard to build. "All right, listen." Ella took a deep breath, eyes sweeping over the anxious faces gathered. "This is our test. We can choose to be paralyzed by fear, or we can choose to act. I know we've just started something beautiful. Let us not let fear define us now." As people began to murmur in agreement, she pressed forward. "I need everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, we can either run in fear or run towards resolving this. We need to be united." Suddenly Daniel piped up, his small voice slicing through the worry. "We're superheroes, right? Superheroes help each other." The room went silent, a collective pause anchoring their resolve. Ella turned to her son, pride warming her heart. "Yes, Daniel's right. Let us rally together. We're all superheroes in Riverview, and we'll protect our town and each other." The mood shifted. Determination surged through the crowd, familiar warriors rising. "People need help. We should go," said Chip, his voice gaining strength. "Yes, let us move," echoed Mrs. Kensington as they prepared to act. Fueled by adrenaline and hope, they surged forward to confront the chaos outside. They were a unified force, their fears transformed into fierce determination, a community ready to stand in the face of adversity. Ella held tight to Daniel, a renewed sense of purpose fueling them both. Here were their fears, standing boldly at this crossroads of change, but together, they were more powerful. They rushed outside as one, ready to face whatever lay ahead for Riverview. The world welcomed them, all of Riverview's voices, laughter, and dreams mingling in the sun's light, creating a symphony of resilience and strength. And as Ella stepped into the vibrant chaos, she felt whole. "This is it," she whispered, feeling Daniel's small fingers intertwined with hers. "Together, we can change everything." Moments later, she smiled, her heart feeling weightless. They would rise. They would thrive. They were Riverview. Don't let this journey end here. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It's crucial. Comment your reactions and feelings about Ella's growth and the power of community. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait, not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.